All right, looks like we are live. I'm really excited to be here today with our mindset coach B and I am Kitty Shambliss, the founder and creator of the Loving Without Boundaries mission. There's also a podcast and a blog of the same name, and we are delighted to be here. And if you are part of our community, we want to say we are happy that you are here. Thank you for finding like minded individuals. If you are not part of our online free community, if you're seeing this somewhere outside of Facebook, know that you can come join our community. You can come to Facebook and do a search for Loving Without Boundaries, Healthy Open Relationships, and Lifestyle Freedom. And there are almost 15,000 people there who are looking for support around consensual non-monogamy, ethical non-monogamy, living life on your terms, whether you're curious about polyamory or those type of lifestyles, already practicing it and wanting to get some support, education, coaching, know that that is available to you. And also, in case you didn't see it, our podcast, Loving Without Boundaries, has been nominated for the Women in Podcasting Awards, and it is a voting competition. So if you've already cast your vote, I want to say thank you for supporting female entrepreneurs and podcasters around the world, myself included. And if you haven't yet, all of that information is all over our social media channels. And if you would like to vote and participate, voting is open until October 1st, and we value your support. So with that, B has come up with an excellent topic today, which is exploring shared values in consensual non-monogamy. And I am excited to have this conversation, and I would love to give the proverbial baton or the microphone over to B so that you can get us started, B. I'm excited to be here with you.
I'm excited to be here as well. Kitty, thank you so much for the introduction, and happy Tuesday, everyone. I want to say that this topic is a very relevant topic to discuss in the context of consensual non-monogamy, like continual exploring shared values and communicating them in a very respectful way, either in our established relationships or in future relationships. So it's a great idea to really get into that headspace of reflecting on how clear are we on our values, how well we communicate them to our partners, and whether we do proper assessment when we meet new people and consider entering into relationship with them. Just to give you a few reasons what can happen. So if we don't pay attention to this process of being really clear about our values and communicating them clearly, we can run into the tendency of battling over our differences and missing out on what our shared values and what our shared priorities are. Or, for example, in the phase of new relationship energy, it's really easy to just go with the positive emotions and sometimes fail to make the right assessment whether this person is in alignment with where we want to take our lives in the long term. So while emotions contain a lot of information about our needs, they're not always a reliable indicator of long-term compatibility. And for example, in established relationships, there's a thing called that can happen, the abuse cycle, where there's tension and fights, and then the relief phase of that, and we feel good and we come together, then the fight starts and again we come together to a positive place. Those positive places, the places of relief, that can feel really great, but they not necessarily indicate that we are good for each other on the long term, because sometimes we just keep harming each other. So this is one thing to pay attention to, that positive emotions don't always signal long-term compatibility. And the other thing that can happen, and I see that really often, is we keep communicating about our values, like I value transparency, I value beauty, and I value connection, and we fail to clarify what does it exactly mean to us, like how does that look like on a daily basis, so we have a common understanding about that. And sometimes we think that we understand each other, but fail to go deeper, like how does it look like on a daily basis. And what else can happen is people's needs and values change over time. It can be due to a life phase, for example, giving birth to a child, or entering just a new season in our lives. And sometimes we can run into difficulties of how we're gonna handle it with our partners, because it can be a challenging situation to be. So it's important to keep exploring if we are still on the same page and how we communicate that to each other. Is it something that we can bridge together as a team, or maybe it's a better decision to part ways as friends? And how we going to navigate that can our shared values, what we share and our differences is going to be really relevant to long-term relationship satisfaction.
Thank you for that, B. I love this topic and I loved your introduction. And I thought I would also share vulnerably a story from my own life that is related to this. It's so important to know that we need to have that clarity. We need to do that self-reflection about what our shared values are, not only so we can communicate them in healthy ways, and also so that we have a good relationship with ourselves, because the relationship that we have with ourselves is the number one relationship, period. Instead of us moving into codependency or enmeshment with other people. And for me, I share sometimes that I am a former serial cheating monogamist. So I was a serial monogamist, but I did cheat on just about every partner I ever had. And that happened for well over a decade in my youth. And it wasn't until I got more clarity around my own values that I was able to shift that. So I had to realize that I was sick and tired of self-loathing, of shame, of guilt, of self-hatred, as I realized that I was not really being kind and considerate to these other people that I claimed that I loved in my life by cheating on them, and really narrow down what are my most cherished values. And I was able to realize that integrity was a really important value for me. So was honesty, transparency, treating other people with kindness, really feeling like we are co-creating, like we're on the same team. And I realized that I was out of alignment with what those values were. I was not being true to myself, and that wasn't how I wanted to be for another 10, 20, 30 plus years. So first I had to get really in alignment and do some introspective work on what are my values before I could then go and express them to other people. And that was really one of the impetuses to me speaking to you today and being here with B, was that kind of dark night of the soul that I had to go through in order to get that clarity. But sometimes we need to walk through the tunnel, so to speak, or go through the dark forest to get to the other side, and remember that we are the hero or the heroine of our own story. And to know that even in those dark moments, even in those storms, this too shall pass. There is going to be a moment where we see blue sky again. To get there, though, sometimes we need to do some self-reflective work, whether we do that on our own or we potentially work with a mentor or a professional or a coach to help us navigate those tough waters, because sometimes doing it on our own can be very difficult. So I just wanted to share that story really vulnerably so that people can understand that even though that was one of the things that I had to go through, even just to be here, to have created this movement and to be here with B doing this talk with you today. So I'll go ahead and give the microphone back over to you, B.
I really loved your share, Kiri, and I really appreciated also that you highlighted the importance of knowing ourselves so we can get in alignment with our own values. And that brought up something in me, which is in connection, like how emotions not always are an indicator that we're alignment in our values or not. So in the past, I can very much relate to your story, like being a serial cheater. And I felt like clear repulsion and disgust when I was starting to get close to potential partners who were kind and gentle and considerate. I was so very much enmeshed in unhealed, unprocessed trauma and limiting beliefs. I was basically sinking in this state. I was completely out of alignment in my values, and I basically ran and cut contact with people with whom I could have had a healthy relationship. and how it changed over time, like going into that cave, working with a mentor and continually upgrading myself, is that with the very same person who I ran from 15 years ago, and I felt disgust because she was so considerate and accepting, now we have a really beautiful and effortless bond together.
Oh,
And
that's
this
so
is one
awesome.
of the things that I cherish in my life. We are really good friends and also have a romantic aspect going on as well. And I could have never imagined that it's all going to come down on me doing the work on myself, letting clear on who I am, what I want, and aligning with my most cherished values. And I can turn my whole situation around like 180 degrees. And the
Wow.
relationship is effortless, it's flowing. It's one of the most beautiful relationships I ever had in my life. So that's what working on ourselves can do, and getting in alignment with our values.
Wow, that is so inspiring, B. That's incredible. And that was over the span of how much time? Like, when did you first know this
15
person to
years,
where you are now?
15 years, 15 years ago, when I was running the other direction, because I was basically running on the fear that I'm unlovable. And if I'm being found out by this person, like they're just going to abandon me. So I was completely sinking with abandon fears as well. But the work turned it around 180 degrees.
Wow, that is so
Beautifully
incredible.
effortless flowing relationship
Yeah.
now. And
And by
it's
that, you mean some of the work that we're talking about here and by going through the coaching journey. Is that right?
absolutely, yeah, 1,000%. Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. That's super inspiring, and I'm sure that resonates with a lot of people that are here, that meaning that you can turn things around if you are really committed to creating positive change and to doing the work. Anybody can do it. Again, whether you do it on your own, but sometimes people need help, and that's okay, so it's also okay to reach out for different help. So what are some other ways that there can be some either repeating toxic dynamics or some other things that can show up and when we're not able to get clear on what our values are and we're not able to have the right communication tools to be able to share that with other people?
Yes, one of the things that come to mind, Kiri, is what you talked about, that we are having this self-loathing and self-hatred. And that's going to be some shape or form projected to our partners, to the people under us. And yeah, it's going to show up in our relationships, for example, in a form of control attempts where we are really invested. I'm not saying intentionally, it's something, it's a pattern that keeps running unconsciously,
Mhm.
that we're getting invested in changing, fixing, or rescuing the other person because we feel so anxious. We're not ready yet to look at ourselves, and it can feel easier because that's the direction of least resistance to try to control the other person. And it works temporarily. I mean, it works in a way that we can decrease our anxiety, and of course there's some reward coming from feeling anger and resentment. But what happens is that we're gonna create an enemy about
Mhm.
this person. So we're not gonna be connected. We can either feel powerful, like in control of the situation, or we can get connected. And what can happen is that we run this belief and we operate from that I'm right and you're wrong. And guess what? The other person is going to do the same, that I'm right and you're wrong. So we're going to enter into disconnection and getting alienated from each other. And it doesn't just affect our connection and our relationship satisfaction, but if we operate from a place of wanting to control the other person, wanting to control the outcomes, that means that we keep our threat system online. We're going to be hyper vigilant because we're always looking for ways how we need to control the situation to decrease our anxiety, to decrease our shame. So
Mm.
that's gonna create um, some fights within ourselves, powerlessness. You mentioned self-loathing as well, and also we are gonna circulate lots of stress hormones throughout our body, which can
Mm.
show up in certain health conditions, hair falling out, brittle nails, irritable bowel syndrome, or whatever ways. But it definitely can affect immune function as well. So we
Yeah.
poison our relationship atmosphere, and we keep poisoning our own body as well.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you brought that up, that how when we're out of alignment with our values and out of alignment in our relationships, in checking on that, if our values are in alignment with the people that we are in a relationship with, that it can literally wreak havoc on our bodies with cortisol, stress hormones, and just, that really can take a toll. So thanks for bring that up. And I love how you brought up that notion of control, because our values are the principles we live by. We can have fear-based values that may be left over from maybe our religious upbringing that we may not be completely in line with today, or maybe old teachings from when we were children or the family that we grew up in. But we can also have values that are really conscious based, like we're choosing them consciously instead of by default. And that's really important to know, that there is a difference between fear based values and then consciously chosen values. And our values can be in different, not in alignment with other people, but there's also needs, just to touch on that really quickly. And all of our needs as humans are life affirming, positive, and beautiful, and not in conflict. But sometimes our strategies to get those needs met may be in conflict, and needs are a little bit different than values. And the attempt to control other people can be a destructive way, that's a destructive strategy to attempt to get the need for certainty or safety or security met. So we can have destructive ways to look to get our needs met, or constructive ways. So that's something that to touch on as well. And that's really related to a lot of the work that we do. So, and I'd love to, anything else before we start to talk about what are some solutions that you wanted to touch on here, B?
Yeah, I would like to touch on boundary struggles as well, like how boundaries can feel like really painful, and we constantly have to set boundaries and defend our boundaries, and boundaries are coming from a fearful place when we're not aligned, with our own values first, and if we're not enter and stay into relationships that are out of alignment with our highest, most cherished values. So that can make the difference between the boundaries that come from a place of protection versus the boundaries that connect us, that serve the highest and greatest good of our relationship and the individuals of the relationship. And it can make the difference between when we make requests or demands, for example, when it comes to wanting or getting our needs met. So it really ties to the destructive ways of trying to get our needs met. And I also want to add that one way out of this, once we really get to know ourselves, is establishing different standards for ourselves, like such as you, Kiri, establish different standards for yourself. Once you get the clarity, like what is it that you want, what is it that you want to create, different standards show up in your life. Because when we really feel that with people around us, whether partners or friends, we constantly have to set boundaries, and it's painful, and we have to defend our boundaries. We really want to look into our standards, like what we allow into our lives, and whether we're in alignment with our highest values. Because when our priorities line up with the people that we are close to, then relationships flow. They're relatively effortless and easy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so beautiful. I'm glad that you touched on that boundaries, and also coming from a place of self-responsibility, that boundary work is our work to do. And that's partly what we're talking about here. So yeah, so some of the ways through this is to be able to ask great questions. And I'm sure B will have some at the end too, but I'll give you a couple here, which are, what are some of your desired outcomes that you would like to see in your relationships, especially if you are coloring outside of the lines of monogamy, which can be tricky and complicated. What are your desired outcomes? And then why is that important to you? Because those type of questions can help you get clear on your values. And then when you're asking those questions and looking at what you may come up with, you can ask, is that a value that I hold today? And am I consciously still choosing that value? Or is it maybe related to something in the past, and maybe coming from a place of fear from possibly decades ago? Like, is it even your value, or did it come from somebody else? And to know that you can also be doing regular check-ins with your partners. When we do work with our clients, we suggest that they maybe have a weekly check-in or a monthly check-in, and we give them a framework on how to do that. And that's really important, just to help see if you are still in alignment, if you are still headed on the same path with your partner or partners. And whether you're in a long-term committed relationship that has been established for years, Or maybe it's a newer relationship when it feels like the right time to have some of these conversations. And it can be a playful, lighthearted conversation. It doesn't have to be something that's super challenging. And that you also can learn conflict resolution techniques and skills and strategies. That's a lot of the type of work that we do with our clients. Is in relationships, there is going to be conflict and there is going to be some differences. So it's not in denying that. It's not in finding relationships with people who are a carbon copy of you, because that's just, even twins aren't carbon copies. There's still differences there. But learning how to dance with those differences, appreciate those differences, and then skill build, learn how to navigate through any conflicts that will inevitably come up, and then see if you can get back into alignment. So if anything that we're saying here is resonating with you, if you believe that maybe you do want to get some extra help, you maybe want someone to guide you or hold your hand through learning some of these skills, these techniques, doing some of this self-reflective work. If that's you, I invite you to consider booking a call. This is a free breakthrough session at the link I just put on the screen, which is lovingwithoutboundaries.com/apply. And that will take you into my calendar. Just simply pick a time that works for you. There'll be a very brief form for you to fill out that just helps set us up for success on that call, so that I get a little context for your particular situation. And then we'll simply meet at that time and just have an honest, authentic conversation, so that I can see, what are you struggling with? What's not working in your relationships? What is that costing you? And more importantly, we'll talk about where you ideally would like to be. And if it seems like by working together, I can help you alongside B and other team members, help you close that gap, we can talk about what working together would look like. And if we're not a fit, or the timing isn't right, you have my word that I will steer you in the best direction for you and help point you in the right direction, so that you get a lot of clarity and value from that time that we spend together. So with that, I'd love to just give the mic back over to B to help wind us up here. I'm sure you have some thoughts that you would like to share here, as you always do.
Yeah, I definitely got prepared with a few questions. But before that, I really love, Kiri, that you highlighted the difference between fear-based and conscious-based values. So I would encourage everyone to look up the difference. Just do a Google search around that, like spend 10, 15 minutes of that. Maybe you learn something about yourself that is going to be like really, really new and really going to surprise you. And maybe that learning is going to redirect the course of your life and relationships, just to make that distinction, what is a conscious based and what is a fear-based value. And with that, I like to build on the really wonderful questions, Kiri, that you shared with us. So I came with 3 questions. The first one is, the fulfillment of what values helps you feel most grounded and connected in your relationships? The second question is, in what ways could further building on your shared values and enhancing understanding of each other's unique differences enrich your relationships? And question 3 is, what are some ways that you can assess whether a potential new partner's values align with yours in a way that supports long-term satisfaction?
Love that. Thank you for coming up with those questions. Those are great self-reflective tools that people who are watching can use. And that's what we're all about. We want to give you value. We want to get you thinking, and to realize that taking that personal responsibility for your own happiness is critical for your happiness and fulfillment in your life and your relationships. So with that, I just want to say thank you for being here. Again, if you are looking for a community, feel free to join us in our free community of almost 15,000 people on Facebook. That's Loving Without Boundaries, Healthy Open Relationships and Lifestyle Freedom. That's the name of our group. There'll just be a few questions for you to answer to join our group, and some simple guidelines to remain a part of our community. There's also our podcast called Loving Without Boundaries, which again is nominated for the Women in Podcasting Award. And all over social media, we have the link if you would like to vote and help uplift women in the podcasting industry, which is a really important endeavor. And the voting is open until October 1st. If you've already voted, Thank you for your support and again, supporting all women podcasters and of course the folks that are nominated alongside myself. And we also have our blog on our website. So the website is lovingwithoutboundaries.com. So if you want to learn more, find some free resources. There's a lot of book recommendations, including my book, Jealousy Survival Guide, How to Feel Safe, Happy, and Secure in an Open Relationship. So you can check that out as well. So with that, anything else, B, that you wanted to add? No? Okay. Well, then I just want to thank you for your time and attention. And we are happy to be here to serve you. We are really passionate about the work that we do. And we wish you a happy day and a happy week. Talk to you soon.
Bye.